Hi there everyone and welcome back to the channel Red and Blue site. It's time for another live stream. This is technically the second edition of the Palace daily live streams that I'm planning on doing. As I said, I'm aiming to try and do maybe one a week. That's my aim to do in terms of live streams around midweek. And yeah, it's just going to be very, very simple setup, as you can probably tell. It's going to be like previous Palace dailies that you guys probably have watched just in general on recordings that I put up on YouTube. And it's just going to be a discussion with you guys, talking about topics surrounding Palace. Of course, week by week, things change at Palace. Things change at every club, of course. But at Palace, I think there's always a lot of changes that happen during the weeks. You never know what team's going to turn up when, etc., etc. So I thought it's a good way to talk to you guys live, and of course get the thoughts of viewers. The thoughts of viewers over the course of the live stream, and to get an idea of what people are thinking at this moment in time. First of all, thank you so much for everyone who's watched the vlog away at Spurs. I know it was an awful result, but support on that's been amazing, and the comments, I'll read through all of them. Some really interesting points raised. Hopefully get onto some of that today as well. And also, just that in general, the support on the channel has been fantastic. So thank you so guys for the support. Hopefully it continues. Hopefully you enjoy this sort of stuff. As always, comment in the chat or comment below if you have any ideas for content for me to do on the channel going forward that you would like to see. I think it's only right that we get started then. We've got some people coming in. Awesome. If you have any questions, of course, guys, that you want me to talk about or anything in particular that you want to see, please do write in the chat, and I can obviously do it live or comment once the live stream is finished, and I will get to your questions at a later date. Obviously, if you haven't already, go and check out yesterday's video I did. It was kind of a review of the game at the weekend against Spurs. All my thoughts really on the shambles that was that 4-0 defeat. I want to start off by talking about what everyone's thoughts are going forward. I think that, and specifically with the starting lineup, what is our best 11? Let's just chuck that out there right now, because I think that there are some times during this season and definitely last season where I think it's been difficult to really see or really understand what Roy thinks our first 11 is, our actual starting 11. To be fair, he has had problems with injuries over last season. I think that's been a big reason for the inconsistencies in the starting 11s. But I do think that it is a big discussion, because now I think we've got a pretty much fully fit squad. Obviously, Tompkins is still coming back. Wickham had a slight knock, and MacArthur. But before the Spurs game, we had a pretty much fully fit team. What would you guys say is our starting 11? Because I think being consistent, obviously injuries aside, being consistent with our starting 11 is so crucial to the way that to any success going forward with the team. And I think with any understanding with tactics and trying to get just consistent performances, you need a consistent starting 11 if all the players are fit. Obviously, as I said, Roy had to make a change with MacArthur being out, and the rest of the team, and also Saka came in for Kelly, who I think was a doubt as well at the weekend. But the rest of the team was the same. And for me, I don't know. I'd love to know your guys' thoughts. For me personally, I feel like the back four that we put out against Spurs should be our starting back four. I think Saka coming in alongside Cahill is the best centre-back partnership for the team. Some people may think it's Tompkins and Sacco. For me, I think Cahill's knowledge of the game, his experience, and already what he's shown over the course of the last couple of games, Spurs game aside, shows how even at his age now, he still has that ability to be a top defender for a team in and around us in the Premier League. He's still got that ability to read a game extremely well, get into good positions, and I think that over the course of a season, he'll turn out to be a fantastic signing. Some guys coming in, Paul. Oh, thank you very much. Thank you, Paul. Thank you for your support, man. That wasn't much fun to film or watch, let me tell you. But yeah, I keep doing the vlogs because I know that you guys enjoy it. So thank you guys for your support. Bad Freeze, this is your lineup. I'll read that out in just a moment. But That's my thought on the back line anyway. Going into the midfield, I do think 4-3-3 is the formation we should always play. I know that sometimes we switch to a 4-4-2 and we, experiment with that. And I think really Roy still goes to that off of the success, against Chelsea in the year that he took over from Frank de Boer. His first win, our first win of that season, obviously that fantastic 2-1 win at home to Chelsea. Zaha was on fire in that game. And we obviously went to 4-4-2 there, and I think caught Chelsea by surprise in that game. And I think that the success we had, we were very much a better team in that game over the 90 minutes, I thought, anyway. And I think that the success we had with that formation in that game was a big reason why Roy goes to that formation quite a lot, especially in some away games. We switch to that formation when we're trying to attack. But for me, I think we rely on it too much. I think we should stick with the 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1, the very similar formations. I think that is what we've got to stick with. I don't think we should start, going around with 4-4-2s. I just don't like us playing in 4-4-2. I don't think it works personally consistently enough. So in the midfield three, for me, I personally think Milivojevic and Chiarte are starters, certain starters for me. I know Milivojevic's had a slow start to this season. I think he hasn't been too good. But again, he's our captain, and I think that you have to start him. I think he will get good eventually in this season, hopefully soon. And Chiarte, he's fantastic box to box. I love Chiarte. I think he's been really, really good. It's the third midfielder, which I think is the talking point, really, and the debatable position, which obviously we've got so much depth now in midfield. MacArthur, Meyer, Camarasa, McCarthy. We've got so much depth in the midfield positions that I think even Roy is struggling to decide who that third midfielder should be. I think that everyone thinks that Chiarte and Milivojevic are dead certain starters, but who goes in that final third midfield spot? For me, I think it should be Meyer or Camarasa. I think we should have one of those players who have a bit more of attacking instinct to kind of go forward, pick a pass. I'd love to see Meyer consistently starting the team down the middle, something that Roy hasn't done yet. Whenever he starts down the middle, it's normally one game, and then he goes out wide if a sub's made. And it's frustrating. I want to see him play in his natural position, which is in centre midfield. I know he may think he can play out wide, or Roy thinks he can play out wide, but he's not good out wide. He's not as good as he can be down the middle. So I'd love to see Meyer start there. If not, I'd love to see Camarasa get a run. Obviously, I think he's I think he was behind in pre-season, so that's why it's taken a few weeks for him to get up to match pace. But I think now that he's ready, we should be playing him more consistently or more regularly, getting some game time. I like the way Roy's dealing with it, though, bringing him off the bench, get some minutes under his belt. But in the not too distant future, I think he'll be definitely knocking on the door for a starting spot as well. The front three, I think for me at the moment, Townsend hasn't warranted a starting spot. He's had a slow start to the season. So Zaha. Zaha's had one of the poorest starts to the season I can think of, and I think that has got a lot to do with obviously the whole transfer scenario that's shadowing him at the moment. And I will get onto that in a minute. That will be my next thing I'm going to talk about is Wilf. But for me, Wilf and Schlupp at the moment are the two starters I'd go with. And of course, Ayew up front, you've got to stick with Ayew. And I think that should be our starting lineup for the foreseeable future until we have reason, whether it's we go on a successive run of defeats, whether it's there's certain key players who clearly aren't performing. I don't think we should be chopping and changing that much. I really feel like consistency is a big consistency in the lineup. It will go a long way in getting us consistency in results. Just going over to the comment section, the chat now. Bad Freeze, I'll get over to your one. So your lineup, this is your starting lineup, of course. Ward, Cahill, Sacco, PVA, Luca, Maka, Camarasa, Townsend, Ayew, Wilf. Very similar to mine. I think just Maka and Townsend are the two that you put in instead of for me, Chiarte and Schlupp. But those are very easily, Chiarte and Maka, very similar roles. You could easily swap both of them out. It does make me happy that we've got so much depth in the midfield now. So it's not really a problem anymore, but I like that team. I think whatever team Roy goes with for the Wolves game, I think because we've got a tricky run coming up, stick with that team. Just stick with it going into that tricky run. Show some consistency in the side. Let's read some more. Do it for your country, New Zealand says, I think 4-4-2 isn't that bad, to be honest. Yeah, at a certain point, it depends who we're playing, of course. I think at certain times we depend on it too much and we stick with it as a starting formation. Say we win a game in 4-4-2, we will then stick with that formation. Fair enough for the next game, but maybe we lose that game. We then stick with it for maybe 2 or 3 games too many. And I think that we don't really keep the ball well enough or press well enough, I think, to have 2 in the midfield. I feel much more comfortable with 3 central midfielders, although we did look like we were playing with 2 central midfielders against Spurs at the weekend. Our midfield was absolutely dire, and that was the reason we lost, in my opinion. But I do think 4-3-3, having the extra centre midfielder for a team like Palace, I think is much more crucial than having the extra striker. I know goals are a problem, but the way we play, so dependent on wing play, and I know Wilf and Townsend and Schlupp are all players that do track back, and especially Wilf, he's worked on that side of his game a lot recently, where he tracks back a lot more and helps with the defensive side of the team. They are naturally wingers who want to stay high and catch teams on the break and not want to defend too much. So in a 4-4-2, you're asking them to do a lot more defensively when they're natural wingers and they're expected to be higher up the pitch. So I just feel 4-3-3 suits us better. And also when we play 4-4-2, sometimes we put Meyer out wide, or sometimes we put Meyer and Maka in the wide spots and put Zaha Townsend up front or Zaha Raya up front. And we're not playing with natural wide men, and I think that really damages the way we go forward as well. So that's why I picked 4-3-3, and I prefer us playing 4-3-3. Bad Freeze would love to see us play 4-2-3-1 like the good old days. Yeah, exactly. In the Championship and when we first came up, that was the key to our success. Obviously, in the Championship, when you had Jednak as that holding, sitting guy in the middle, you obviously had Moritz further forward. Zaha Belassi out wide, who actually ripped up the Championship that year, unbelievable. Murray up front, 30 plus goals for him that year. It worked fantastically, and but then obviously different managers come in, different philosophies. So I understand the change in formation. It's just I'd rather we stick with 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1, which we know works historically for Palace and does work because I think most of our success has come with that formation. 4-4-2 when we're defending, then 4-3-3 on attack. You could do that, yeah. When we sit into 2 banks of 4, that makes sense. And I think we do that, actually. That's a good point, Bad Freeze. I do think we do that quite regularly. We do seem to drop into 2 banks of 4 when we defend, and then it quickly turns into a 4-3-3 going forward. So that is a good point. Meyer out wide is shocking. Says do it for your country. Yeah, I agree. I don't like Meyer out wide at all. I'd love to see him consistently start down the middle. Just give him a run of 5 games down the middle. See what because I think that is his true position. He can really influence a game with his passing ability. His way he can dictate the tempo. But you can't really do that out wide. You don't get enough of the ball. You're immediately you're cramped with the touchline and defenders. You don't have much room to work with. Whilst in the middle, you can see the whole pitch spread out in front of you, and you can spread the pass, dictate the tempo, and that's his game. He plays in the middle, not out wide, and that's why he was so good with Schalke. Obviously, not towards the end of his time at Schalke, he had problems because he wanted to leave the club. But we've got to start him in that centre mid role or number 10 role if we're doing a 4-2-3-1. I'd love to see him play there. I think he'd be a much more clinical, much more effective Jason Puncheon. In the year we came up, we had Puncheon in that number 10 role. Obviously, big player for the club. I wouldn't go as far to say legend of the club, but one of our own. Always loved Jason Puncheon, but that's the role Meyer should be playing in my opinion. I think let's move on. So that was my thoughts on the team, of course. 13 minutes in, almost 14 minutes in. I think that's a good description there of my thoughts on the team and having to have a consistent lineup and the players playing in certain positions. That's all my thoughts there. Obviously, cut back to the start if you were tuning in new and you can watch it through. Or obviously when the live stream's finished, go back and watch it. I think we covered some quite good points there. Thank you for your comments on that. Moving on. I mentioned Wilfried Zaha a few times. Let's talk about Zaha. And I mentioned him yesterday in my Palace Daily / Palace review of the Spurs game. It was mainly a review of the Spurs game yesterday, but we do talk about Wilf in that, and I give my thoughts on that in a bit of depth. But I wanted to go further with that today. What is going on with Wilf? He's obviously had I say what is going on. We all know what's going on. Obviously, that's a bit of a stupid question, but the start to the season on the pitch for Zaha has been poor. No goals, no assists. Came off the bench against Colchester in the Carabao Cup, didn't do anything or couldn't get anything going really. The whole team were poor in that day. I can't really blame him in particular for that, of course, but in the league especially, you can tell he's not right, and that the stuff off the pitch is clearly affecting him on the pitch. He's when he's on those one-on-one scenarios, when he normally is so fluid and silky with the ball at his feet, always guaranteed to pass men. To be fair, against Spurs, although the team itself were poor and we got battered and Spurs were a much better team, whenever Wilf got on the ball out in wide positions with his running at defenders, every single time he skinned Rose or Aurier and got through one or two players at least. His end product wasn't great, but he skinned some players fantastically against Spurs, and that was probably for him alone, that was probably one of his better performances of the season, despite how poor the result was in the end. But that aside, he's had a very poor start to the season. No goal contributions as yet. I think that obviously leading up to the game, he had the whole thing with his agent. He sacked his agent who obviously over the summer couldn't get in that move away that he clearly wanted. And people have read into that as it could be a good thing, it could be a bad thing. Personally, I think that him sacking his agent and trying to hire someone else is just another sign of him wanting to move away and being disappointed he didn't get that move away. I still think that he was very poorly advised by his agent at the time for putting in that transfer request a day before the window shut. I think that was very stupid, especially when it was only Everton who were really properly linked with Zaha. It made no sense whatsoever for me. I mean, if he put in a transfer request a month before the window ended, or 2 weeks, or even 1 week before the window shut, I think it would have made a lot more sense. And I don't think anyone could have been too unhappy with that. But to do it a day before was just, it almost showed a lack of respect for the club as well, because the club's made him the highest paid player, and they've said all along that if we don't get a bid in that we think is the right bid, or if then we're not going to sell you until you show us that you want to leave. And I think that was on the table for Wilf, and Wilf waited until, or his agent at least waited until the day before to decide to do anything about it, which I think was poor from them. And I don't know. Despite all of the Instagram and Twitter posts with Wilf and all the smiley faces in training, which I do feel great about, I love seeing all of our players happy, of course. But there's something about it that bad for his brother wasn't his agent. His brother's not his agent. I think a lot of people have said that before in the past. It wasn't his brother. But anyway, despite all the happy social media pictures and everything like that, and it's great to see him smiling in training and everything, I think there's still a part of him that feels like he feels guilty for what he did in terms of that transfer request, and it got a bit toxic. Some fans, obviously, I think fans are now split completely on Wilf, whether to let's just get rid of him in January. You're ruining this. Is the end of your time at Palace is getting really, really. It's not a nice exit when you go now. It's starting to turn a bit sour, a bit. And that's the problem, and I can guarantee that's not what Wilf would have wanted to do. And I almost feel like he feels guilty that things are starting to turn sour and that he's starting to lose support from some of the fans for the way he's performing and leaving the pitch against Spurs, just going straight down the tunnel when 8 or 9 of the other teammates stayed to clap the fans for the support and to apologise for their performance. And Wilf normally is one of those players, but he just walked straight down the tunnel. One of the first player to go down the tunnel. There's something there where I think that he wants to leave clearly, but there's a way of doing it. Be nice, just be nice. The fan base has always backed him through everything. Where all the times he's accused of diving, the fan base are the first people on there to just squash that and to set the record straight with Wilf. We always had his back, and I still have his back. I still love him. He's the greatest player to play for Crystal Palace, in my opinion. There are too many adjectives to describe him. I can't. I could go on and on about him. I love him that much as a player, and I feel so lucky to have watched him play. But the way this is going is really, really. It feels really bad. It feels really sour. It feels really nasty. The way his time at Palace is ending, and I really hope it doesn't end like this. And I really hope he can just mentally get back to the way he was last season and just absolutely destroy teams and do bits for Palace until he does go, whether that's in January or the end of the season. This is going to be his last season with Palace, and I'd love to see him go out on a high rather than what is clearly going to be a low and really, it's not looking good the way he's playing right now, and I think it's going to cause him to have a really nasty exit. And it's looking like that's fans are starting to split over his performances and the way he's conducting himself as well. When, as I say, leaving the tunnel, going straight down the tunnel after Spurs is what I mean by that in the way he's conducting himself. And I really just want him to just go out on a high. That's all I want. And it's sad to see if he does leave and under this cloud with people now starting to turn against him. I really hope that's not the case. I really hope he goes out with full backing from everyone, because that's the way he should go out. And I think personally, I'd love to see, in terms of when he does leave. Personally, I feel like I can definitely see something being agreed in January. I'd love a fee to be agreed in January, and for Wilf to then move to that club at the end of the season in the summer. I'd love that to be the case, so we can have a full season with him and see him out. And I do think if that happens, if a deal does get agreed in January for him to then be sold at the end of the season, I do think we'll see an improvement in performances as well. But hopefully he can improve his performances before that, because the better he plays, the more likely he will get a deal to go somewhere else. So that's my thoughts on Zaha. Of course, it's a sticky situation with him at the moment, but I hope that he can clear his head. He still is our most important, most valuable player, and he's so crucial to us this season for his last season at the club. I really, really hope he can just, clear his head and just start the season again, and hopefully he can kick on. And I think that first goal, that first assist will, kickstart his season right now. And we need it at the moment. So that's my thoughts on Zaha at the moment. Jack Wilkie says, a few fans have been saying Cahill deserves the armband after Luke had an argument with Wilf versus Villa. What do you think? I know the argument you're talking about. For me, that was nothing. That was just a captain, being firm, being hard on his fellow players. I mean, like Tyrone Mings was last night with El Ghazi. He was basically saying to Wilf, you shouldn't be letting, work for the team. You shouldn't be letting that player get past you like that. Sort it out. And obviously Wilf loves an argument. We all know that on the pitch. He's not afraid of that. So he obviously responded to Luca, and Luca didn't like it. But for me, it was nothing. Those sort of things, I think, are then squashed, and ended once they get into the changing room. I think they talk it over and get things sorted. Yeah, exactly. Bad for you. I think they're both passionate. They both want to win. They both want what's best for the team. And I think that those massive, in the heat of a match in the Premier League, that can cause clashes. But does Lucas still deserve the armband? Is a question that I think has come up a few times for me. Absolutely, he does. I don't think he's had a poor start to the season by his standards, I think, over the last 5 games. I think he's had a slow start. He's had some good performances over, 10, 15-minute periods. I think he's had some good moments, but he's not been very consistent this season at all by any means. And obviously with Cahill being such a dominant figure and being so experienced and so he having experience to how to captain a big team as well, being at Chelsea and winning trophies at Chelsea as a captain as well. Obviously, there's naturally going to be links to Cahill taking the captain's armband from Luca. I understand that. For me, I think Luca will always be the captain as long as he's here. I can't see him losing the armband unless he wants to, unless Roy sees something, obviously, or talks to Luca and Luca feels like he can't lead the team. But I can't see that happening at all, to be honest. And even Cahill said that he loves Luca as a captain and thinks he's a fantastic captain and a great leader to work under. Cahill said that himself, and as a top captain that Cahill was at Chelsea for a long period of time, that obviously means something for him to say that about Luca. So I think Luca, he just needs to get out. I think when Luca plays well, it goes a long way for the team playing well as well, because obviously his position, he's in the thick of it, being in that defensive midfield role. He's so Palace through and through as well, Luca. He's literally got there's glimpses of Melee there as well, and Melee. You go back to Clint Hill, Paddy McCarthy. You know, there's a tradition with captains being these at Palace being these rocks, these absolute hard nuts who, you know, bleed red and blue. That sort of thing. And I think Luca just fits that bill perfectly as a Palace captain. Sacco was good as captain for sure when he had to take the cat armband at points. Connor, what are your thoughts on Benteke getting a new contract? I understand not wanting to lose money, but I think we're going to have to take one on the chin and let him go. Connor, I did do a video on this about a month ago. You can go back and check that out. I'll talk about that now for a bit if you want, but if you want more detail on it, you can go and check that video out. It was a Palace Daily I did. It was when Luca and Benteke... No, I think it was when Wickham... There was a day when 2 or 3 players were very close to getting contracts signed, one of them being Benteke, and I did a Palace Daily video on that. But in my thoughts on it, I don't think he warrants it at all. I don't think he warrants a new contract, and this is we've given him chances as well, and he's very lucky to have another season with us, I think, because any other club would have gotten rid of him by now. And I know that's harsh. Yeah, most of you probably would say it's not harsh, but it's just crazy how it's gone downhill and how an injury can change a striker, because he was so clinical in that first season with us, so lethal up front. And I thought, here we go, at last we've got a goal-scoring striker in the Premier League. We haven't had one of these for forever. And then I think he came back from injury and was just crap. And even that second season, he didn't really have that many. I don't think he really had one short nut spell out with a knock, but nothing major. And it was just, I think his confidence hit rock bottom. You think, yeah, he can't go any lower than this. He will recover and start scoring goals, but it just hasn't happened for him. And even this season, coming off the bench at Spurs, he had 2 fantastic chances to open his account and to actually, you know, get a consolation goal, and that would have been great for him personally. But he scuffed those chances, and they weren't that difficult. And he absolutely mistimed the shot, P-rollers straight at Lloris. And you know, I think that we should sell him. I think we should sell him, and we will make a loss on him for sure, unless somehow some miracle happens and we get a bid in from a Chinese club, offering 30-35 mil for him. I can't see that happening right now, but just cut our losses, sell him, and obviously that frees up the wage bill. We start again, and we do need a striker in. As well as Jordan Ayew has started this season, it's so much pressure on him. He's the only striker that we've got at the moment. Wickham's still not fully fit. And that's it. And Benteke as well is there, of course, on the bench. But no one has any confidence in Benteke coming off the bench and scoring, or starting consistently and scoring goals for us, unfortunately. So it's a shame, but we need to bring in a new striker in January. We need to, and a right back if we can. If the club if the club has the budget for it, or are willing to spend the money, because obviously they said we thought that the amount we would have to spend in the summer window just gone on a striker and a right back would have put the club in a poor place financially, and we didn't think it was worth it. Well, I think it is worth it in squad depth, and the amount of money the club makes every season from the Premier League itself. There's got to be some leeway there, surely, to add some more to the transfer budget, surely. Dean Hill, yeah, bring James Daly into the squad. He did come into the squad briefly last season when we had some injuries. Didn't feature off the top of my head. I distinctly remember being on the bench away to Bournemouth. I think I remember I was at that game, and it wasn't. I remember seeing him on the bench, but yeah, I think it's tough for a team like Palace when we know we're going to be trying to stay up. Is our main aim. It's easier for a team, say like Chelsea, as you see this season, to introduce youth because they're a club that with Lampard in and a transfer ban, not much pressure, and they can afford to because they're going to be up and around that sort of part of the table. For us, with so much riding on it in terms of survival, you obviously prefer to have experience. But I think in the situation up front, with everyone being so poor, apart from Ayew this season, it can't hurt to start a youngster. James Daly's been banging them in for the academy, especially last season. He was fantastic, and I think he's knocking on the door of at least a chance. At least, this could be a Wan-Bissaka moment potentially if it's the right game for him to start in and everything clicks. FA Cup. I think he should start in our third round FA Cup game, whoever we play. I think later in the season that should be a great chance for him to start up front. So yeah, I'd love to see James Daly get a chance, like a Wan-Bissaka moment for him. And who can argue with that? Because the rest of the squad haven't really performed up front. Of course, I use the only exception there. After the start of the season, Schlupp starts over Andros. I started off the video saying that in terms of who I think should be our starting 11 at this point in the season. I think Schlupp should start out wide ahead of Andros Townsend. I just think, and Spurs game backed that up for me. I thought that he was awful out wide, Townsend, against Spurs. Really bad. I don't know if that was just because it was Spurs we were playing. And he wasn't all there or something. I don't know. But he didn't play against Villa or United for a reason. Roy dropped him for a reason and started Schlupp out wide, and it worked very, very well. Schlupp coming inside against United, that flick on for Ayew for the opening goal. And then against Villa as well, he was fantastic in the wide positions. So I don't know why then Schlupp was put into the centre midfield when we've already got 3 backups potentially on the bench. Not MacArthur because he was out injured, but we had 2 midfielders on the bench who are actual natural centre midfield players. Schlupp is a left-sided player, left wing-back, left winger, however you want to describe him, who likes to play in the centre of midfield and can play there, but it isn't his natural position. And to start Andros Townsend out wide, who hasn't played well enough to warrant a start at this point in the season. So, yeah, there was confusion over that starting 11 against Spurs, and as I said at the start, go back to the start of the video. That is what I start the video talking about, is the lineup against Spurs and my thoughts on what should be our starting 11 going forward. Bad freeze thoughts on the atmosphere now with the HF in Blocky. It's just how I thought it would be and how I think most fans thought it would be. It's much, much better. First game of the season I was at home was the Villa game, because I was on holiday at the start of the season and unfortunately missed the Everton game. But I was at the Villa game at home as my first game of the season. I was in the upper tier, and you can tell being in the middle, the noise is much louder. It spreads across the ground much better than being in that corner. A lot of the sound escapes through into the open sky in that corner of the ground. Being in the middle, the roof coming over the top manages to keep a lot of that sound in. It's brilliant. And I know that there was trouble getting there, and I've done videos on that in the past, and I've talked about that before, last season, addressing that and all my thoughts on it. But I said, there's got to be there's a right way of doing it, but ultimately this is the best thing for the club and the support, and we always got to look to improve the atmosphere at the ground. I don't think it could be stagnant in any facet of the club, and I think that it's really, really improved the atmosphere. And I know that's hard to do at Selhurst Park. The atmosphere is always going to be good, but they managed to take it to another level. So credit to the HF for getting that move done. I know it wasn't necessarily the right way of doing it, and going on a strike and all that. I personally didn't agree with. But the move's done. It's over. We move forward. I think everyone's happy with the outcome now. I hope everyone's happy with the outcome now. Yeah, the whole atmosphere feels just louder in general. And it's been a fantastic move so far. So I love the HF and everything they do. Sometimes they let themselves down, with certain things, or maybe in the away ends and so certain away trips. In the past, you could say they let themselves down, or in some ways. And I think the strike was at the start of last season wasn't the best way to go about making themselves heard or getting the move done. I thought it could have been done in a much nicer way. But I think the move itself was definitely had to happen, and they're a massive part of the atmosphere at Selhurst Park. There's no debating that. They're a massive part of Selhurst Park. Thoughts on why Schlupp gets slated so much? Undeserved. I don't know. I haven't heard much of Schlupp getting slated as such. I think that I think it may be just the way he plays in centre midfield. I think there are games where he's fantastic in centre mid, but I love him. I like him more out wide, and I think a lot of fans prefer him out wide, personally. Yeah. If Zaha goes to Chelsea, how much do they have to offer if we get Mitchie as part of the deal? It's a good, especially with Batshuayi not even really getting a look in at Chelsea. He's not even making the bench in some occasions. Giroud's obviously their second choice striker. Lampard doesn't rate him clearly. I think that there was a missed opportunity there in the summer again to go in for Batshuayi. I think it would have been very, very difficult to get that done on a permanent, but there's definitely room there in January to go in for another loan. I think we should be straight on that. Get him in on a loan to the end of the season again, and then you never know. In the summer, after two successful loan spells, you never know what we could get done in the summer in terms of a permanent deal. But I'd love us to go in January. In fact, that should be the top of our list. Michy Batshuayi on loan in January. Got to go for it. We've got to go for it. And potential there as well, definitely. And in terms of Chelsea, I think Chelsea is the number one destination for Zaha, in my opinion, right now. I know they've got Hudson-Odoi and Pulisic, but I think Zaha's better than Pulisic, in my honest opinion. Hudson-Odoi still is young, and he's had a fantastic start to his time at Chelsea. I think there's still question marks over consistently, whether he can do it consistently over a season. He hasn't had a full season yet. I think he can do it consistently, and I think he will be a starter for Chelsea for the foreseeable future. But Pulisic is that position where I think Zaha can take that from Pulisic. I really think that. And I think that Chelsea, come January, if Pulisic isn't starting to hit the heights, they might agree a deal for Zaha. Hopefully, as I said, a deal agreed in January, but then to be sold to the club in the summer. And if we can get if we can get, say, he'll cost you, say, 40 million plus Michy Batshuayi, I'd absolutely rip your arm off for that, in my opinion. If we get Batshuayi on a permanent, I think that's a massive step forward for us. We need a striker of his quality. Clearly, you can tell just from last season the way he makes his runs. He's such an intelligent striker. There are points where he made runs that were so brilliant and that, the rest of the team clearly weren't used to that sort of movement up front, and he was getting frustrated that passes weren't being put through. He's fantastic movement, and his finishing is very clinical, and we miss that kind of striker, and I'd love him to come permanently. I think it's going to be very tough to get a deal done, but Batman about the club, fan favourite, and he clearly loved the fans as well. We loved him. I think it'd be a perfect recipe for success at Palace with Batshuayi in the mix. I really do. And I think we'd have to sell Benteke first to then bring him in. And of course, possibly make it part of the Zaha deal. I think that makes it even harder to get done. But that could help things move along. Yeah, we do need a right back, of course, but I think right back and striker is our priority in January. And if not January, then hope that we're in a good enough spot to survive this season and then sort it out in the summer. But I definitely think Wilf should leave, especially if, as I said, go back to the start. 15 minutes into the live stream, I start talking about Zaha and my thoughts on Wilf. Go back to that if you missed it already, but I do think that if Wilf is still not in the right mindset come January, then get a deal sorted for him. But I'd love to have him just finish one more full season with Palace, and then hopefully get a deal agreed in January with another team, but let him finish off this year and then see him leave in the summer. That would be what I'd ideally like, but I definitely think he should get something sorted this year. I think it's time. I think he will go this year. And Ward, I can't fault Ward. I know that sometimes he's clearly lost the yard of pace that he couldn't afford to lose in the first place, and that he didn't have to lose in the first place. But as a defensive-minded fullback, he's a reliable fullback. I know that he's not as good as he once was. That's clear to see. But I think he always puts in so much effort for the team whenever he plays, and you can never fault his commitment to the side. And he does have good games. He's much less consistent than he used to be. But there was that time, obviously, a few seasons into the Prem when he was knocking on the door for an England call-up. Didn't get it, and I think that was mainly because we're Palace. And that was, Zaha was absolutely having one banging form for Palace at one stage, and he didn't get a call up to the England squad, and Townsend did when Townsend was arguably in some of the worst form in his Palace career, and that was the catalyst for Wilf changing his allegiances to Ivory Coast. So I don't know if it's just a curse on Palace that Palace players don't seem to get called up to England squad when they deserve to be. But Ward, I think, is one of the players that will go down as a legend of the club for what he's done over the course of his time here. Absolutely, I love him. Absolutely fantastic servant of the club. And it's a shame that obviously he's got to the stage in his career now. I think he's noticeably worse than he was at the start of his time at the club, which is a shame. And we do need, but as a second choice right back, 100% he should stay. But it's harsh on him to be our first choice right back. Jack, yeah, I mentioned this. If you go and check out, it's literally 3 or 4 videos ago, my FIFA 20 Palace Daily video. I did my FIFA 20 Palace rating reveal and my thoughts. Yeah, I was absolutely. That was the one player I was fuming about. As Guaita somehow has gone down 2 ratings in this FIFA. He's now 79 rated on FIFA from 81 last year. 5 ratings less than Bernd Leno for Arsenal, even though Guaita kept more clean sheets last season than Leno. So I don't see the logic there whatsoever. So yeah, Jack, I'm fuming at that as well. Don't worry, you're not alone on that one. Getting a replacement for Zaha worries me, Ethan. Yeah, well, whoever we bring in to replace Zaha as like the official winger replacement, they will never be as good as Zaha. It doesn't matter who we get in. They may be playing at a better club, for example, and take a step down to come to Palace. I say step down, like Batshuayi in a way, when going on loan to us, being a Chelsea player. It doesn't matter who we bring in now. I think Zaha, as I said, and I'll say it again, is the best player in the club's history, and I feel so privileged and lucky to have been able to watch his whole career at Palace and watch him grow as a player. I feel so fortunate to have watched him play for my club and see some of the amazing things he can do on a football pitch. And I don't think any other player will ever play. Some players may have the same skill level as Zaha or be more clinical than Zaha, but I don't think any player will hit the heights with the fans, with the club as Zaha has. So I think it's going to getting a replacement doesn't necessarily worry me. I'd like to think, although there hasn't been much proof that Dougie Freedman or the board can bring in suitable replacements, and to be honest, or use the money wisely. Sorloth was a bit of a panic buy. It's a shame, but he was. There's evidence that Adebayor, for example, didn't work. I think there's been evidence of spending money on the wrong players and it not working out more times than it has worked out of late. I think at the start of a few years, that's in the last 2 or 3 years. I think before that we did have a good success rate in terms of bringing in players. But I think that getting in a Zaha replacement, I'm not too worried about that. I think we will get in a good player to replace Zaha when the time comes. But I don't think they'll ever hit the heights that Zaha's hit at Palace. I just don't think that will happen for another generation, I don't think. If you had to bring in any player that has ever played for Palace into the squad now, who would it be? For me, Ian Wright. Mainly, that's a good question, Jack. I like that. Keep those coming. Andy Johnson. I loved watching Andy Johnson, mate. That was at the start of my time when my first live game ever at Palace. Andy Johnson was playing for the team. I was 6, 7 years old. That was my first live game, going to watch Palace live. Being a Palace fan all my life, of course, but that was amazing. I remember it so clearly. Boxing Day, last time we were in the Prem, Boxing Day 2005, Ian Dowie's Crystal Palace team and Andy Johnson up front. We lost 1-0 to Portsmouth, but after that game, I saw Andy Johnson play a handful of times, and what a striker he was for us. What a striker. But for me, I'd love to see Ian Wright, because I never got to see Ian Wright play for Palace, and he's obviously highly regarded as the best player in the club's history, neck and neck with Zaha. And a lot of fans would still put Ian Wright as the best player to play for the club. And hearing the stories and watching video clips of some of the goals he scored for Palace alongside Mark Bright, I'd love to see him playing. Imagine that, Ian Wright and Zaha in the same team. That'd be amazing. 3 footballers that I hate the most. That's tough. There's a lot of footballers I don't like. Lewis Dunk, Will Buckley, a lot of Brighton players in there. But that's the typical one. I don't think I have 3 that I hate the most. Lewis Dunk would just be the one player that I dislike the most. It's a tough one, that one. I don't think I could pick 3 out as the one I hate the most. There's always players that when you say you're losing 1-0 when you should be winning, and players time waste or go down easily to waste time and stuff. There's always players that frustrate you and you want to rip their head off in the stands. But I think that's just reactionary, and all fans get that sort of feeling when when they're frustrated with the team or a result, and a player from the opposition side starts going down easily and frustrates the hell out of you. Capu, yeah, Capu and Deeney are big ones. There's some Watford players who really wind me up, wind fans up. There's a few, mate. There's a long list, I think, if I really thought about it. Jack, another great question. Obviously, Volta mode coming on FIFA, but who would be my Palace five-a-side? That's a great question. So, obviously, we're talking Guaita in goal, obviously. I assume this is the current Palace team. We're not talking all-time Palace. So, I'm going to stick with the current Palace setup, Jack, for that question. I like that. That's a great question. Keep these questions coming in, guys, of course, and also in the comments when the live stream finishes. I'd love to hear more questions like that. Five-a-side Palace team. Guaita in goal. I would then have, so I'd probably do a 2-1-2. Or no, 2-2-1. I'd have two defenders, two midfielders, and a lone attacker. Those two midfielders can split wide and, drop back in if they need to. I would have Cahill in there just as an absolute rock. I think in a five-a-side would suit him brilliantly. There wouldn't be too much need for movement. He would just get in front of everything. And I would also have probably Mamadou Sakho in there as well. Not the most mobile two in defence, but I think there's not too much need for mobility. I think you obviously get tricky wingers and tricky skillful players in five-a-side and in the Volta mode, of course. But I think that those two there will be solid as a rock. I then ahead of them have Maya and who else would I have there? Let's go Camarasa. I think we can, with those two, with Cahill and Sakho behind them, I think we can afford to have two skillful players ahead, and then Zaha up top. I think Zaha is the definition of a five-a-side player. I think he would absolutely rip teams apart in Volta. Yeah, FIFA out in 2 days with early access. I don't have early access, but I have got, I do have it pre-ordered, and it should be arriving early as well, because I think it's not the standard edition. So I'm looking forward to FIFA. Always do. I'm probably not going to play it as much this time round, but as I have previously. But just one moment, guys. I'm just going to get some water. Run out here already. Talking a lot. Obviously, get questions down below if you want any more questions to talk for me. I will be back in just a sec. Right, we're back. Hello, guys. Sorry it took a little while. Just checking up on some tweets. What are we saying? I'm going to wrap up this video soon, guys. I'm going to be wrapping up in probably about 10 minutes or so. I think an hour is plenty of time for this sort of live stream video. Don't want to have too much time with me just chatting away at you guys. But if you're enjoying it, of course, hit the like button and tweet it out or go on Instagram, whatever social media, and show some support for the stream, of course. Here we go. Jack coming in with another question. What are your thoughts on Johnny Williams now he's playing well? Was it right to let him go? Good question again, mate. Jack, whether we go on a live stream or on a video, keep the questions coming in. I love your questions. Fantastic stuff. It's great. I've said this about Johnny before. I did a tweet about it recently when he scored or he assisted for Charlton recently. I love seeing him fully fit and playing well again. Although it is for Charlton, it's great to see. I always thought that when he was at Palace, he had potential, especially in the year we went up. He had potential to be, at that stage in his career, he could have gone on to play for an Arsenal. He would have been a fantastic player for Arsenal, working under Wenger. He was a proper Arsenal Wenger kind of attacking midfielder, very tricky, very his dribbling was fantastic. Very close control with the ball, a lot of agility as well. He was a perfect Wenger cam, and I think that he could have done bits for a top team, and he was very close to a move to a top team, I think. Then the injuries started happening, and he's been trying to get better ever since, unfortunately. But whenever he's fully fit and in this sort of form, especially in the Championship, where he obviously started his time with Palace, it makes me happy, even though he's at Charlton. I'm so happy seeing him playing well. At the time, don't get me wrong, at the time it was right to let him go because of his injuries and because we had players in that at that time were better than him, and I don't think he would have got the game time he needed at this point in his career. He is still fairly young, but he's coming towards the what is the peak of certain players' careers, and he needs to be playing football regularly, which is what he's getting now. And he's, credit to him, worked on his fitness. He's stayed fit for a while now, and he's doing bits for Charlton, so I'm happy for him. Kahinda A says, where do you think Crystal Palace will finish this season? And what's going on with the new stadium? New stadium, we don't know. It's gone very quiet on that front. I think it will be quiet until we sort out until the Americans are out. I think they want to leave the club, and until they're out and new owners are in or buy the club from them, I don't think we'll see too much movement on that in the near future. I think it was meant to be this summer that work was going to start on that, but I think there's still things that need to be arranged, and it's just gone very quiet. So I think the plans are still there, and the aim is for that to happen still, but it's going to take longer than I think everyone first thought, because of especially the Americans wanting to sell the club, or at least their shares in the club. So yeah, it's going to happen, but it's going to take a while. As for where Palace will finish this season, I said 12th in my predictions. With 90 min, obviously go on the ticker down below, follow up 90 min, go on YouTube and follow them up on there, subscribe, and Imperial Wolf as well. But and of course Patreon as well. I don't know if it's down there, but follow me up on Patreon if you have any specific videos you want me to do. Become a Patreon go and follow me up on Patreon, and I'll make sure I'll get those videos done for you guys who are Patreons, patrons on for me. But where are we going to finish? I think it'll be 12th. If you have any player at Palace from outside the top 6, who would it be? If you have any other player at Palace from a team outside the top 6, good question. Any other player from a team outside the top 6? Right now, Timu Pukki, probably, because we need a goal scorer, or if we're going to start 2 up front with Ayew and Pukki. I know that sounds harsh on Ayew because he's playing well at the moment, but we need goals, and I think Timu Pukki gets goals and assists. So if I had to be honest, I'd go with him. There's a number of players I could go with there, though, to be honest. If you're talking outside the top 6, who do we class as outside the top 6? I'd say Leicester is. There's like Vardy, Maddison, Pereira. Now that Wan-Bissaka's gone, there's a lot of Leicester players I'd love in our side. Damari Gray I rate, even though he's not rated very highly amongst Leicester fans at the moment. There's a lot of players. Last question from Jack. Favourite ever Palace kit? Interesting one, mate. I love the 1990 home kit. I think that's a really beautiful kit. Dominant red. I'd love us to go to red shorts, red socks for next season. We've always gone for the last God knows how many years. It's been red and blue shirt, obviously, but with blue shorts, blue socks. I'd love us to go dominant red like we did in the 90s for a long periods. I think those kits look great. I know that we're more blue than red in general, but I'd love to see some more red in our kits in the future. But that home kit and obviously the sash. I think the sash is the absolute classic. It's a beautiful kit as well. The 76 was it? 76 through to the early 80s. We had the sash for a number of different seasons. I love the sash personally, and especially when we've gone back to the sash in away kits recently. The Evil sash, which is one of my favourite away kits. Last year's away kit was brilliant, and this year's one. I love a sash. I love a sash. Yes, Jordan, I think we should drop down. I go back to the start of the stream, I mentioned about my starting lineup, who I think we should stick with going forwards from now on after the start of the season we've had. And for me, I think Schlupp should be our starting winger and Townsend should be dropped at this point in time off of form. Right, guys, I think I will probably wrap things up there, to be honest. So we're just coming up to the hour mark. I've said everything I wanted to say about the lineup, about Zaha, and obviously answered your questions as well. Always enjoy doing this, so thank you guys so much for your support. Be sure to tune in, subscribe obviously down below, and obviously on the ticker down below, follow up all the social channels down there. And if you want to become a Patreon, follow me up on Patreon as well for exclusive videos that for you guys. I'll do those videos if you become a Patreon, of course, and support me on there. There's other ways you can support me just by following me on social media and liking the stream, sharing this stream out to other Palace fans. And yeah, I will be trying to do these once a week to, different points in the season. And these are almost like videos to sum up how each week is going at Palace and get your thoughts live. And I love interacting with you guys live. I love live streams. So thank you guys for your support. Thank you guys for watching. We'll be trying to do this, as I say, next week. We'll have obviously the Palace review and of the Wolves game coming up, or Palace preview for the Wolves game coming up at the end of the week, and the vlog as well will be there at the Wolves game. So get your thoughts in for that. Thank you guys so much for your support as always. Love your support. Subscribe down below if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys next time. Thank you guys very much for watching. Can't wait for the next video to come up. Cheers, guys.